Okay, good day. Just a quick discussion on how I envision NoRizzk being able to integrate test automation from a Jenkins type CI environment. And in order to do that, let me just illustrate how at Group Care there have been several implementations of this, and it is fairly necessary for us in our QA department. So I'll begin with our current setup that we have in Flectra's Spira team. And I've just pulled up, I'll send a copy of this PDF file so you can reference this, but essentially talks about configuring the Jenkins job inside the build environment. And you can see right here that they wrote a plugin. And so you just enable the Spira integration, the project ID, the release version. And once you authenticate that, you just have to make sure that in the nightly builds or your test automation builds that there's an output in potentially a JUnit or XUnit style setup, and that can get captured. Now in Spira Team, it just they map the result sets, and it kind of lets you know if that test passed or failed. I am not a big fan of the Spira Team mechanism of integration. It's really not, it's kind of like in a silo on its own. It's almost like they were mapping the outputs directly without any kind of like heuristics or any kind of like correlates. Doesn't let me know much. A lot of this information is kind of not obvious from a test backlog perspective. But it does exist. It can be done. Plenty of people out there doing it, and I'd love to see NoRizzk do a better job of it. So at any rate, let's go ahead and see what. So we could see right here, these are some of the ways that they just illustrate. Now, once again, I'll make this available, this PDF available when I send this out. There was a different product I used prior to Spira Test and the Spira Team. Rather, it's the Meliora Test Lab. They're a European company, and they have a Test Lab plugin. Again, I'll send you the link to that, and you're welcome to do the read up on the mechanism of how they implement this. And again, this is a little more detailed and much more appreciable to see, and it's kind of a nice template to see how you could potentially do something like this. So I'll provide a link for this as well. So if NoRizzk can do something similar, now here's what I'm envisioning. So if I'm in NoRizzk, and let's say for a moment we have a integration with Jenkins, then I'm foreseeing in the test backlog, at least to begin with, in the test backlog, I'll set up a test, right? And this test would correlate with one of the tests I would have set up in my CI environment. So let's just suppose this is one. Just click in on, drill in on it. See, right now, I use a tool called Serenity, and be happy to send a link out to that as well. But this is how I capture the test data from within Serenity. But that's keeping everything within the Jenkins environment. There's no way I can like aggregate this information and kind of like ship it through into the test tool where things make much more sense than just siloed out in a CI environment on its own. But essentially what I want to do is I'll make a test, and the test will have an output. Let's see if we can go to the configuration. And let that load up. All right, give it another moment here as it's loading up. So I'll give it a moment as that loads up. Let me go back to talking about what's going on in the test backlog. So I kind of envision, apart from manual testing, all of these test cases that I'll have over here, um, that let me click on one of them. So let me think about this. We have a sort of like, okay, here maybe you have an example where we have multiple steps in a test case, and what I want to do is I automate these test steps, and those automated steps are executed in a Jenkins environment, and now there's a result set. And then what I'd like to do is see that reflected somewhere in one. Maybe there's a column, CI automation execution results, or some. You guys can figure out, how we want to label that column. But in that column, it'd be nice to have a test fail, basically carry over the idea of test failure block, a pass failure block. So here you see that I have a Spira test integration, and this was let's see, a Maven test. Let me see. Actually, it's going to be right here. So I'm running my tests, and then I'm outputting them. So right here. So in this case, these are Cucumber scripts that are executing as part of Maven, and they're being formatted in a JUnit style, XML parsed. So if you capture the output log and then just parse that information out, just the necessary information that you need to map the result. So it could be pass fail or block or whatever, and then you could say number of executions, and just keep a tally of this, and it would reflect against each one of these. So I could potentially have test automations for all of these tests in the backlog, and every one of these may have a corresponding entry in the Jenkins environment. So I'm hoping I make myself clear there, and then what I'd like to do is have NoRizzk be able to tie that output information up and provide it in reporting somehow. And then again, that would be really nice, because the idea would be that headlessly and unattended executions of these tests are happening overnight. We walk in the next morning and we're just looking at the reports. And if there's any failures, we are presented with exactly which ones in the test backlog failed. And so that would be very helpful. And again, you can go really fancy with it, and you can, with every subsequent failure, maybe you could, the number for the RPN can keep going up. That's just a wild thought, wild speculation, and there's something that potentially that the risk factor with every subsequent failure just turns up the RPN, and then that just turns out to be one of the things that is definitely a risk, and it's continuously failed for X amount of executions, and it just needs attention. And so that would be also very interesting if in the test backlog these RPN numbers changed, because they keep tally of the number of executions coming through and how many times they passed versus failed. And I think that would just make NoRizzk phenomenal. Okay, basically there's no product out there in the market that meaningfully takes that information output from a CI environment, and then basically does a complex event processing of it and interpretation, and then makes a really meaningful analysis particularly from a risk perspective of what those nightly executions have meant. All right, so I hope that helps, and I'll get you the documentation and link. So thank you very much.